In this video, I'd like to share with you how to create a relative frequency graph. In fact, we are going to take care of relative frequency ogive, histograms, and frequency polygons, and I'm going to show you how to do each one, and we're going to put them all on one single graph. I've gone ahead and we have some data here represented in class boundaries, and I have their corresponding frequencies. Total of this data set is 20 data points. And I've gone ahead and put the boundaries over here on our x-axis, making sure that I put our mark to say, hey, we're not starting at 0. And I've also put an extra mark here on the x-axis, and then I scooted over and put my boundaries on that x-axis. Okay, so first of all, we need to remember how to calculate relative frequencies. I just called it an RF column. So if you recall from earlier in this course, we would take the individual frequency, divide by total. So we're going to take 1 and divide by 20. If it's a value that is a roundable decimal, we want to round out 3 decimal places. Okay, for this first one, it's just 0.05, so that's just fine. So again, you're going to take the individual frequency, divide by the total, and round if you can. So we have like 0.1. The next one comes out 0.15, 0.25. So we're doing 5 divided by 20, so 0.25. 4 divided by 20 is 0.2. 3 divided by 20 is 0.15, and then 0.1. Okay. Next, we want to create a percent column. And the reason I'm having you do a percent column is there's 2 ways I could show you a relative frequency graph. One is by plotting everything in terms of decimals. The other way is plotting everything in terms of percentages, and that's the way I'm going to choose to show you today. Okay, so in going from decimal to percent, you'll remember that's multiplying by 100, or just simply take that decimal point, go 2 to the right, and you have your percent. So 5%, 10%, 15, 25, and so forth. Okay. If you want to check your work on either the RF column or the percent, remember the sum of your decimals should be approximately 1. The sum of your percent should be approximately 100. And I'm saying approximately just because if we have a little bit of wiggle room in our rounding, maybe it comes out 0.99 or 99.9% or something like that over here. So you might have just a smidge of error involved. Okay, and then the last column I've included, just because I want to talk to you about the ogive in a relative sense, is CF percent. So it's just a matter of doing cumulative frequency from your percentages. So at the end of this first class, we're at 5%. We're going to add 10 for the next one. So now we have a total of 15. Another 15 gives us 30. 25 is 55. Add 20, so we have 75. Add 15, so we are at 90, and then finally we are at 100%, so that this value and this value match, so we are in good shape. Okay, so in a previous lesson I mentioned that given a choice of which of these 3 graphs to start with, I always do the ogive first. Okay. In this case, with the percentages, not quite as important, because anytime we're doing a relative frequency graph and dealing with percents, it's very nice to scale your y-axis, because with percents, you're just going to go up as high as 100 and you've got everything covered. So for this example, I'm just going to scale the y-axis by 10. Okay, so we place those percents up the y-axis. All right, so to start with an ogive first, okay? Ogive, we're going to plot this CF percent column, okay? So we will start at the beginning of this first interval. At 5.5, we've accumulated nothing. No data points have shown up. So my first point is there at 5.5. By the end of this first interval, I've accumulated 5% of my data. So I'm going to go up here at 10.5. I'm going to put a dot at about 5. Okay. By the end of the next class, so by the time we get to the end here at 15.5, now we have 15% of the data. So we go up here, 15%. By the end of the next class, we've accumulated 30%. By the end of the next one, we're at 55. We're over here to 30.5, we have 75%. Okay, at the end of the 35.5%, we're clear up here to 90. And lastly, we land at 100%. So to finish that ogive, or the cumulative frequency percent graph, we will just connect our points. Okay, and if you recall, on an ogive, it goes up high, it does not come back down. Nowhere in this particular graph does it come down. You will not have a decreasing portion. It could be flat because you've added a zero frequency. We don't have that in this example. Okay, so that would be a relative frequency ogive by interpreting with percents. Okay, next up, maybe we would add in the histogram. Okay, histogram is going to use values from your regular percent column. And we will be drawing vertical columns. So between 5.5 and 10.5, we should have a column up as high as 5%. So we will come up here. That would be the first histogram column. Okay, and again, we're working from the percent column for each one. Okay, so the second value there, we want to go up to 10. Looks like my 5 was a little overestimate there. Okay, so we're up just a bit. Next up, we're going to go up here as high as 15%. Okay, in the next section, we go up to 25. We're next at 20. We're going to come back down a little bit. 15% is next. And lastly, we are at 10%. Okay. Pardon my artwork there, we got off. Should be touching vertical columns, okay? So that red one is your histogram. Okay, and I'll put RF next to it because we're using it by way of percentages. Okay, then the last one we'll do, we'll add in our frequency polygon. Okay, so the blue we're going to put on here is going to be a frequency polygon relative. Okay, remember frequency polygon wants to deal with midpoint and in this case percent. Okay, so we're going to go to the midpoint of each class and we're not going to actually calculate, we're just going to estimate and we're going to mark what those frequencies are. So this one, 5%, the midpoint here, we're going to be up at 10%. The third one, 15. Okay, essentially you're going to the midpoint of each of the columns on the histogram, which makes this user-friendly. Okay, we'll connect our points. That would make our frequency polygon. And always remember, we have to close the front door and the back door to complete that polygon. Okay, so again, the histogram and the frequency polygon are showing the same data points, just two different graphical representations. Ogive shows how you're accumulating data by the end of each of the intervals or each of the classes. Okay, if I had given you specific information where this data came from, certainly you'd want to put a title up here for your graph. Okay, I put boundaries here. Again, it's generic. You could do something specific. Percent will work if you knew the origin of your data. Okay, you won't always have to put them all three graphs on one single graphical representation. I just kind of did it so you could see them all in one happy place. So I wish you best of luck with relative frequency graphs. In this case, we did them by percentages. I certainly could have used the same tactics, but used a decimal system on the y-axis rather than percents. It would look just the same. You would just have decimals up the side. Okay, thank you for watching. Good luck with everything.